Hello and welcome to this podcast. This is our second podcast put together by the HE team on everything disability and the intersections of. In this podcast, we're going to be talking specifically about the intersections of identifying as a woman and also identifying as disabled. And we're thinking about particular intersections, particular barriers or challenges that people experience, personal views. We might be talking about lived experience as part of this. And if there are any particular content warnings, because the topics can get quite heavy, you'll find them in the description below with timestamps so that you can skip over any of those if you'd like to. Those of you who don't know, DNA is a disabled-led social enterprise that supports disabled people in education, in the workplace, and in the third sector, do things like training, one-to-one support, and consultancy. Bit of a personal introduction. My name is Meg. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a disabled woman and the Training and Innovations Lead at Diversity and Ability. And essentially what that means is that my role is facilitating workshops, supporting our fabulous team of facilitators, and delivering on things like the programs that our new business development teams or higher education teams put together. I look after things like our content, I do lots of consultancy, and generally you'll find me involved in lots and lots of different DNA things. I guess most of that is because I came to DNA as a student via my DSA support. I loved it so much that I didn't really leave. And I'm joined today by Victoria and Alice, and I will pass over to them to introduce themselves. Victoria, do you want to go first?
Cool, yeah. I'm a disabled student. I'm currently studying archaeology and I'm in my second year. I also am Disabled Students Officer at my university in the Students' Union, and I've just been elected for a third time, so I can say I've been doing this for a while.
I'm Alice, my pronouns are she, her. I am not still a student. I work for the last year and a half, I've worked for HAFCAC, which is Hammersmith and Fulham Coalition Against Cuts, as a development worker. And at the moment, I'm also coordinating Sisters of Frida's Independent Living Research Project. Sisters of Frida are a disabled women's collective. Before that, I was one of the women's reps on the NUS Disabled Students campaign, back when they had committees.
I guess we will dive straight in with the first question. We've got some talking points in today's session, but feel free to take us on a tangent or to explore different areas that might not be specific to the question. But the first one I have is around barriers in getting diagnostic evidence or diagnoses. So I think for those people who are less familiar with the DSA system, who might be listening or watching this, evidence of medicalized diagnoses in relation to a disability, whether that's a health challenge or mental health condition or a learning difference, is required as part of the application process for DSA. And we know that unfortunately a lot of people experience delays in getting that evidence or even a diagnosis in the first place. So I guess my first question to you both really is, what's your experience of this, the delays and barriers in accessing diagnosis or diagnostic evidence?
Yeah, so personally, I started uni in 2018, and at the time I didn't explicitly identify as disabled. I didn't really think such a thing was for me, and I personally only identified as having long-term mental illness, and I knew nothing about the chronic illness that was going to come in my future, which was going on at that time, but I completely thought it was normal. So I knew that DSA was a thing, a Disabled Students Allowance, that I could get help with, but I thought, oh no, I'll be taking it away from someone else. And no one ever stopped and explained to me that this is a thing that I'm entitled to and I'm completely okay with it. I was suffering from massive fatigue, which I put down to long-term depression. But that, all of the things that they helped with would have helped so much. I now have a screen reader, I have all sorts of different technology and different processes and magic things. And second of all, once I did, it was when I was already Disabled Students Officer. I was already representing all disabled students on campus, and I thought, oh, maybe I should go for DSA. And I had my chronic illness diagnosis somewhere in between there, and I ended up only going for it last year in February. And then at that point, I took a leave of absence right after. So I ended up coming back to uni in January this year, and I still hadn't got the support sorted because I'd just kind of taken a pause. I'd moved away back to my parents, so I'm not in my uni town. And I've basically only just got it sorted in the last few weeks. So I'm in my second attempt at second year, so I'm in my third year at university, and I've only just got the support in place, which, like, looking back at it, I'm actually really shocked that no one sat me down and said, right, let's do this. Because I didn't have the diagnosis, I didn't have the knowledge that DSA existed, and now I do have a tangible-ish diagnosis. That's what's allowed me to do it.
Thank you so much, Victoria. I guess, do you have similar experiences to that, Alice?
Yeah, I mean, and also huge mood on the, it would be great if someone just sat you down and said, here's this, and also what you can get and how it works and stuff. Someone with knowledge, or hey, an entire organization. But yeah, I mean, so I was a student for 8 years in the end, on a 4-year course, and I had most of my diagnoses. I had like chronic illness and long-term mental illness stuff before uni, but I only got diagnosed with ADHD when I was 25. So that kind of ties into the huge underdiagnosis of women and girls with ADHD and the lack of recognition for the way that manifests in women. I essentially had to self-diagnose that first because still nobody caught it. But even with that process, by the time, very much like the barriers of getting the diagnosis, it took a full year between realizing that I had it and having the official diagnosis from the NHS. So, I mean, yeah, that year, I mean, I was still trying to like not suspend my course, but I did end up suspending my course. And then in the end, it took so long that the diagnosis, which meant that I couldn't get any accommodations for it, obviously. It arrived a week before the start of my next academic year. So, yeah, I mean, the barriers are huge. Medical and getting people to believe you, and then just accessing support, needing that diagnosis is, I mean, we need to be moving away from the medical model. It's not social model friendly system. It's not. And if support was based on what you're actually struggling with as opposed to your specific impairments, would be great, I think.
Amazing, thank you, Alice. I think it's so interesting to think about like how many people are impacted by that association between late diagnosis or misdiagnosis or lack of belief around a specific diagnosis and misogyny or prejudice against specifically women and girls. And it's something that I think my own experiences of are slightly different to being told. Have experiences of being told, no, that isn't your diagnosis for many years. But my initial experience was, I can't be labelled as that, or I don't think I want a diagnosis, but I know I need access to support. And I know that I'm going to keep failing exams, or I'm going to fail exams and not be able to progress through my actual course unless I get some level of support, even though at that point I didn't know what that was. And I think for me, the biggest challenge was actually that stigmatization of having a diagnosis and knowing exactly what that was and how to get it. Because I come from a particular background where diagnosis is not something that is ever spoken about, whether somebody has a diagnosis or not. And it's not something that people want to be labelled with. And while my opinions on that are completely different now, and I don't think that the medicalized model is absolutely not the model that I resonate with or align with, but I do think that diagnosis, when I finally got to the point where I realized this is the only way I can access support, I'd already experienced the trauma of having to go through that process of, hey, actually, I think there's something wrong with me. I'm internalizing that medicalized deficit belief before I can actually access any support. I think that in itself is really traumatizing.
Yeah, definitely agreed there.
Yeah.
I guess the other thing that I've personally had quite a bit of experience in is just not being believed about symptoms. When I was younger, I spent so many hours at the doctor with constant abdominal cramping, and I was so often told that actually it wasn't something you need to think about, actually you're overreacting, or you're a hormonal girl was the most common thing I was always told. And the answer that you get was, you should just take the pill. That'll solve all your problems. But there was never any consideration in that of actually, what did I want and what might help me? And again, it was that concept for me of having to understand that there's something wrong with me, and the only way to fix that is by taking this one thing, but you don't have any autonomy or choice in that. It's so hard as well when the impacts aren't just, I have to live with pain. The impacts are my education, my social life, my relationships with other people, and my just general capacity to cope and process things. I think that's so difficult when, particularly, I think medics don't, or professionals don't understand that your experiences are really challenging and are actually stopping you from being able to do what you want to do.
Yeah, pain isn't just hurting, pain is life. That's a complete day of your life lost to it. It's not just hurting, it's an absolute thief of your time, of your energy, of your well-being. And especially in my experience as a woman, doctors don't take pain seriously. They treat it as a symptom. They don't treat it as something in itself that can really, I don't want to say destroy, but it can really impede your life. And when I've gone to doctors before and I've said, like, I'm in pain, it's take some paracetamol, which categorically does not work for me. And then anything stronger than that, they'll say, like, oh, why do you want that? Are you sure? And then you ask for something else and they say, oh, but do you want to get pregnant? And I'm a 21-year-old student. I'm also not planning on getting pregnant anytime soon. So it's the constant barriers of doctors going, yes, but what about this? But what about this? And I'm not allowed to make my own decisions myself. My doctor decides if the pain is too much for me to live in, but she doesn't know me. And that's the hard bit to get through, because it's trying to explain to them that, no, this is my life, this is my decision. I'm not coming to you absolutely clueless. I can understand them explaining different things to someone who has no idea, but chronic illness is my life. It's my everyday. I know about my chronic illness. I know about my body. I probably know more and more in tune with my body than any able-bodied person, because I have to pay attention to it and I have to care for it. And to sort of be told every time I need help or assistance, yes, but I'm making the decision for you, is so damaging, so traumatic even.
Yeah, it's scary, the amount of people that this impacts, and the amount of similar resonating experiences, and the amount that this is actually sort of discussed in formats like this, where people are saying, please listen to us and please hear what we're actually saying and understand us. But yeah, I think the reality is, there are people who do get this and who do understand, but there's a much bigger majority of people who haven't yet understood what it means to truly give a patient or a person really autonomy and agency in their own care.
It's also part of the training as well. It's, that's the thing with all institutional issues. It's instilled within the structures. They're taught to act in that way. It's very much not centered on how someone experiences something, but rather, them as the agent, I guess, the medical professional as the person with the agency in that situation.
Definitely.
It's like the social care system a little bit, like how there's, the carer and the cared for, and just the implication of that.
And the power dynamic, I think, that comes with that situation in the medical profession and in social care profession. It's such a power dynamic that really, I think, disempowering or disenabling for individuals.
Absolutely, it's a hugely imbalanced power dynamic. That de-emphasizes disabled people's autonomy and, my current project is on disabled women's independent living and ability to live independently during COVID. And it's usually horrifying, but there are some particular kind of, human rights breaches, but just absolutely awful things that people have tried to get away with just to exploit people. It's all bad. Power imbalances.
Yeah, I think especially with me, my main point of contact has been primary care doctors, and general practitioners. I've seen a few specialists, but my sort of frame of reference usually is general practitioners who aren't specialists, and they're taught to act like they're specialists. GPs really are, they don't say, I don't know, very often. And especially male GPs. I generally find a female GP is more willing to sit with you and talk to you a little bit more. Not much, but a male GP will go, yes, well, I know about this. And it's so damaging. Like, it's so bad. But I'm between two doctor surgeries because being a student, I've been living both in my uni town and with my parents, which is a pain in itself because you can't be registered at two. I have to deregister and re-register every time. And so I've been blocked from all the online access. So I have to phone up every time I need an appointment, which is an access barrier in itself. But in my uni town GP, I don't get a choice of who I see. If you want to book an appointment, you book an appointment with anyone. And so I have no continuity of care, which then equates to them very rarely appearing to read the notes. And often they go, what's the problem? And they start from scratch. And I feel like there's no sense of them believing what's going on. They really struggle to believe what's going on because they've not seen me through the entire time. And I get really kind of dismissed with it. And especially when they do read my record, they see that I've got in big letters on my record. I see it every time I go to a doctor's. It says, like under 18 with mental health issues, which I'm 21. Why haven't they taken that off? But being under 18 when I was diagnosed with my sort of mental illness means that every time I see a doctor about anything, that's at the forefront of their mind. They think maybe I'm depressed and feeling bad because I'm depressed. Maybe I'm anxious and that's why I'm coming to them about my health. I get that so much, like, are you not just being anxious about your health? Which, of course I am. I'm chronically ill. I'm always dizzy. Why would I not be anxious about that? But it's not because of anxiety. And I've said to my friends before, I wish that I didn't have the pre-existing mental health diagnosis. That genuinely, if I could change time, I would get rid of that. Because even though I'm not ashamed to have mental illness, my doctors appear to be. And that's such a massive barrier to me because every time I see even an old doctor, but usually a new doctor every time, it's all of my symptoms are chalked up to mental illness, but they never ask how I am.
So true and so poignant as well. I think exactly what you're saying is something that really resonates with people and my own experiences as well. I think it's also something that resonates in the higher education sector beyond medicine and GPs. Do you have experience of that, I suppose, within education rather than within healthcare?
Yeah, I mean, I constantly have to re-explain myself. One of the things that my uni does well is their student support plan system. I've heard that other unis don't share them around so much. Students have to actively bring it up. My tutors are very good at everyone reads everyone's student support plans, so they know what's going on. But even then, I have to explain to most new tutors, no, I didn't do the reading, I was so fatigued. And they'll go, why didn't you do the reading? I go, well, I can't control it. I was in bed all week. I'm not going to read your book, I'm sorry. And everyone I meet, I have to re-explain myself. And it's even down to stuff as small as, can you turn on the captions on this Zoom call? And I have to say that every day of my uni life. And it's something I'm advocating for massively as disabled students officer, that if a tutor is doing a Zoom call, they can click that live transcript button. It takes one click of a button. But every time I have to say, look, can you do captions? And several of them have afterwards gone to me and said, oh, Victoria, can you stay behind in the Zoom call? Why do you need captions? Is this okay for you? But it's not in a way like, oh, why do you need captions? It's, can I be accessible? But they're not saying it right. And they shouldn't have to. Yeah, to read. I need captions to read. That's it. But it's having to out yourself every time as the girl who needs the captions. It's when it was back in person, I had a meeting with someone and they just immediately walked off up the stairs. And I'm there like, I can't do that, or I can't do it as quickly as you can. And so I'm there struggling up the stairs, slowly, step at a time, because dizziness, it would be even more embarrassing if I fell. Let's face it. So it's having to out myself constantly every single day. And then people want an explanation. They will say, oh, why are you walking so slowly up the stairs? And I don't owe them an answer. Nobody owes them an answer.
Yeah, I think also some of the things that they can do, like turning caption on, they take so little time. They're so easy to do. And it's something that we should do as an anticipatory practice, rather than something where we have to react to a specific need, which then brings about it that stigmatization of actually having to share your own challenges and the barriers you're experiencing. And there won't be everybody on that call, even who maybe calls that you're not in, where they won't feel able to have that conversation and say, can you turn on the captions? Because there's that huge power dynamic between education professional who is running a class and the rest of the people who are attending as participants. And that's so hard, because I've been there in that scenario where I've not felt able to ask for something that will mean that I can access a conversation. I graduated in last June, and my very last part of uni was this transition very quickly to online. And the challenge with that was that no one actually knew that there was built-in captioning, or nobody knew that we should not put slides with white backgrounds and black text and then just share them only on the day and not in advance. And these things, like, we've had references to them when we were in a physical university space, but when they moved online, it became so prevalent really fast, and you have to voice yourself.
I'm quite worried that the accessibility is going to disappear when we go back. So, for example, we always have a policy of, if you have an hour-long lecture, you have a short break in the middle. If you have a 2-hour-long lecture, you either have breaks in the middle of the half hours or a big one in the middle. And we've stopped doing that online. In fact, the policy normally is the class goes from 5 past to 5 to, and we've stopped doing that. We've started, beginning on the dot and ending on the hour. And that time would normally be walking between classes, having a drink, going to the loo. And genuinely, there's no time between classes now. You finish one, you're already clicking on the Zoom link for the next one. And I'm worried that when we go back, that's not going to exist, and they'll forget about breaks, and tutors will do a 2-hour lecture with no break in the middle. And I'm quite worried. Everyone's saying they're, hoping this will be a step forward for disabled students and disability in general. All disabled people are quite often benefiting from stuff online, but I'm really worried that it doesn't mean we'll benefit. We're going to take a step back, and maybe that's me being cynical.
Well, no, I don't think so. I think certainly, apart from the move online, as things changed, it was used as an opportunity to roll back accessibility and access practices. And everything that we've seen that, in the physical space has been a move to, not a move to decrease accessibility even intentionally, but the assumption that disabled people are not going to be using services outside, or because we're all we should be shut away in our homes at the moment. And it's like, I am shielding, but also no, you don't get to forget I exist. And certainly the advances of our rights in every arena are under threat. I mean, the CARE Act was threatened almost immediately. It's been a real opportunity to roll back our rights. And I also can easily imagine that once it then goes back, the normalization of the inaccessible practices from the online shift, as well as the inaccessible practices from before the online shift, combined to make just one super fun environment.
And plus with universities and everywhere in life, with long COVID and COVID causing the problems that it has, we're going to get so many more disabled people. Like, currently, I think our university I can't say the word statistics, declared we have 1 in 10 disabled students. Undeclared, I estimate it's probably 1 in 4. But that's completely, But it's going to increase. It's going to increase massively with disabled students, disabled staff as well. And there are going to be issues. People are going to need captions. People are going to need level access. And it's the basic stuff. When I say captions and level access, you think that's the basic stuff of disability, and it's still not being done.
As a disabled women, have you encountered barriers or misogyny when challenging others to provide your right to access support? And maybe that's even within disabled spaces.
Yeah, certainly. Of course. I mean, both whilst I was within the student movement and now I'm beyond it, I'm working in a disabled people's organization, which is absolutely wonderful in terms of kind of default assumption of like access needs and things like that, and working with other disabled people, that's great. However, like I'm the primary worker for one of my organizations. I mean, in total, the employees there don't equal like even half a week's time, but still, I work there the most, and I'm supposed to be a primary representative, and yet I will find particularly kind of chief execs and the like, but men will talk to other men, and will after I have asked them to do something, will then redirect to other men to confirm. It's very strange. When we are supposed to all be fighting for justice, the justice is rarely, I mean, intersectionality within the disability movement and the disabled people's movement is, it's bad. Those are all bad. We're not great at it.
I think I share a fairly similar experience in that I work in a disabled-led organisation, and access needs are something that is kind of just ingrained in our practices, but it very much wasn't ingrained in my university experience. And my university background was healthcare. So I was studying a degree that was related to supposedly supporting people who were experiencing challenges. And that was never the language that we used to talk about disabled people. And the language that was perpetuated there was very much people with disability. And that was challenging for me, a newly identifying as disabled person in my first year. And the biggest barrier I faced was not just trying to change the language and narrative around being a disabled person and, wanting to access specific spaces that definitely weren't set up for me. But it was also around the fact that I had peers on the course who were not women, who didn't identify as women, who identified as men, and their access needs were met much faster. And purely because they could have conversations with our senior leadership team who were somewhat misogynistic, and that meant that his access needs were prioritized over my access needs. And if he asked for something that I needed, it would happen if he asked for it and not if I asked for it. I think that's so scary because in a healthcare background, we're going into the healthcare sector and we're going to be looking after people for the future. And that's really, really scary to see.
Yeah, I found that when I've asked people for accommodations before, I'm seen as the one who's kind of hysteric. It's because, I'm not a very passive person. I will go to someone and I'll say, I need this, you're not doing enough. And they'll say, oh, wow, she's mad, she's in hysterics. If a man comes to you and is mad, it's intimidating. If I come to you and I'm mad, it's confusing. Or whatever adjective goes with it. I'm struggling for words a bit, but it's kind of seen as me being inappropriate. Whereas if a man does it, it's them being assertive. If I do it, I'm whining. I'm, can probably associate certain words, but yeah, and I've faced such sort of misogyny, not just in sort of the uni spaces, but in student activism spaces. And when I'm talking about student activism, it'll be, I'm currently in a partnership with someone else who is non-binary, and they're a bit more mask-presenting than I am. And when there are issues, they will be listened to when they're speaking seriously. If I'm speaking seriously, there'll be a lot more questions, there'll be a lot more disbelief. And it's got to the point where I will genuinely say things to them for them to say. And that should not have to happen. But even in other sort of disability spaces, within the uni and outside, I shared as a disabled students officer on the Instagram account for the network, I shared a post from one of our societies saying why ableism is a feminist issue. And I instantly got messages from someone saying, explain this. Like, I don't understand it. You need to explain this to me. What's feminism got to do with ableism? And it was just someone Yeah, they were demanding my time. They were demanding explanation. And I said, read up more on the post. They've added links, or if you want to message a creator, you can. And then they replied to me, especially being a disability representative, I don't think the language is appropriate at all, but they said, you're blindly sharing stuff that you don't believe in, and that's not okay. And I'm thinking, I'm a chronically ill person who struggles with words quite a lot, and you're expecting me to explain a post that I shared from someone else out of my own labour. And, you know, someone questioning whether feminism is an ableist issue, very, very clearly, whether it's a man or a woman asking, is very, very clearly misogyny. And also in in-person spaces, I've found that with some people who maybe their disability involves being less good at social cues and stuff like that, they don't see themselves as accountable for their sort of words. I've had people say to me, like, talk over me quite a lot, or, you know, men talking over me quite a lot, and they don't see themselves as accountable in the slightest. They say, well, I have X disability, and that's not okay at all. And I've had meetings where we've had men. I was chairing, it was one of my first ever meetings as DSO, so back like 2 years ago now, and we had 2 men and 2 women on either side of the table, and I'm chairing, and all of them struggled socially. I think that's what drew people to DSN at that point. It was a social group. DSN is our acronym for Disabled Students Network. And as the 2 men kept feeling like they weren't heard and didn't feel like their points weren't heard, and the 2 women were trying to talk, the 2 women were shrinking into themselves. It was very, very obvious they were getting shyer, they were getting intimidated. You could literally see the fear signals coming off. And the men were getting louder and louder, shouting and trying to take up more space. And I watched this happen, like, standing back, and I'm thinking, I have no idea what to do here. And I tackled it by repeating back what they were saying, like trying to reassure them they'd been heard. But at the same time, it's really not okay that I could see these women were feeling visibly intimidated in this situation. And as much as a chair can do, I was, 18 and struggling with it. It was quite a scary situation for me because I saw the misogyny happening in front of my eyes. And even if it was an active misogyny and these men didn't think, oh, I hate women, it was them dismissing women. And people still don't see that as misogyny. And that's a massive problem in disability spaces, especially where you get people, I'm sure it happens in other liberation spaces that I'm not a part of, I don't know, but you definitely get disabled men saying, yes, but I'm disabled, so I can say this. And it's not on.
Again, the lack of intersectional awareness. I mean, last year during the Black Lives Matter, there would be absolutely blatant racism really coming from a lot of kind of white disabled people within the movement, but also kind of organizations just saying, well, why do we have to worry about this? Or I'm oppressed too because I'm disabled. It's like, you're actually trying to speak over Black disabled people right now.
Yeah, I think it's especially a problem where we don't make explanations of things like this so accessible to some disabled people, where they quite struggle to understand the intersection. But I feel like there's no education from the start. So education from the start of university in my student group, nobody knows about disability history. We actually had a wonderful talk hosted by DNA about sort of the history of the student movement and our language and our rights, because I thought it was so important to teach us from day one. Because even I struggled to find sort of resources on disability history and learning, and I've been doing this for years. And yeah, I am a firm believer in the whole education point. I mean, we shouldn't be, dismissing each other anyway, but we need solid education.
But that's also not the start, you know? I mean, if young disabled people, but also non-disabled people, because you can be disabled at any time.
Yeah.
And you can become disabled through multiple avenues and at any point. Like, if we were talking about the social model of disability, it could change so many lives so much earlier. But even, of course, education itself is inaccessible and segregated in many ways, let alone learning about disabled history and like how to think of ourselves in a way that's actually empowering. The whole system isn't empowering.
Our final talking point is really around body autonomy, because I think it's important that in this space we are thinking about disabled women, but also within the kind of higher education or the educational space. And university is so multifaceted and involves excelling at your studies and excelling socially and making sure that you're the best person and being independent and relationships and interacting with people. And I think this is where body autonomy becomes really, really relevant for non-medical health professionals in the HE space to really be aware of, because providers or people who might be listening to this really need to understand our experiences with body autonomy. And I guess when we're talking about body autonomy here, we're thinking about the kind of right to governance of our own bodies, the agency that we have to make decisions that impact us, our rights to choose, and also how our rights to kind of choose how we present ourselves to the world. And there is so much that we could talk about on body autonomy, and we could do an entire podcast on body autonomy alone, I have no doubt. But I think maybe a good place to start here, and we'll try and keep this kind of relatively tight, but the idea of the just ask, don't grab campaign, I think is a really great place to begin this conversation. So I guess for people watching or listening who don't know, this was started by Dr. Amy Kavanagh, and it came from a place of trying to stop disabled people from being grabbed, pulled, pushed, moved, touched without any consent. And we talk about this a lot in our training sessions, and we often talk about a section on basic disability etiquette, which is not something we should ever have to talk about, but is something that is really relevant and often quite new for a lot of people. And one of the things we say or often raise is don't move a wheelchair user without permission, because let's face it, if I came up to one of the training attendees who is non-disabled and I just moved them out the way, or moved them down the corridor a bit, or pushed them towards the counter in a coffee shop, that wouldn't be okay, and I'd probably get something more than just a pretty stern look from them. But it's a really common experience, and we're talking about it here because it still happens today. I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
All of the things we've already discussed really relate to bodily autonomy. I think it's a really central issue for disabled people. Working kind of the last 2 years or so on independent living, it's really interesting because one of the kind of central ideas is, we need choice and control over our lives and what happens to us. That's just not the baseline assumption, and that's what we're constantly fighting to get. It's hugely gendered, it's hugely racialized, it's a matter of disableism.
I think often it's the misconception. It's not even sort of someone going, haha, I'm feeling evil, I'm going to move this person's wheelchair. It's they genuinely think they're being helpful, which people genuinely think, if you're I don't know, just sitting in your wheelchair on the side of the road, they'll go, oh, I can just move you over here. Or if you're struggling up a hill, this is an experience of a friend struggling to wheel their manual wheelchair up a hill, they just grabbed and pushed them up, which is not okay, especially in the time of COVID. You don't want people to be touching your things. But people do really just assume they're being helpful. And that power dynamic makes it so much more difficult to turn around and say, don't do that. So if you turn around and other able people will also tell you're for it, where you turn around and you say, don't do that, that's not okay. Other people go, oh, I was just trying to help. They were just trying to help. It's okay. And even this is a friend's experience, not mine, but when this person grabbed their wheelchair, they went home and they sort of grumbled to their parents, going, oh, I've had a rubbish day, someone grabbed my wheelchair. And the parents went, oh, I'm sure they were just trying to help. And again, it's like I was saying earlier, it's the rhetoric you hear from everybody around you. It's not just one person. It's one person, and the next day it's another, and the next day it's three. And by that point, you've had 52 people come up to you and try to help. And it's sort of, I wish that more people were aware that touching someone else's mobility aid without permission is harassment. That's by definition against the law, because a disabled person's mobility aid is classed as an extension of their body. Although, we've sort of discussed, men don't really pay attention to that in the first place to able people. So, but yeah, it's a difficult one, because you say I've gone into the bank and I need to use a machine, I'll put my walking stick on the floor because I know it won't balance against anything. I'll do my stuff, and then the woman came over to me and she went, "Oh, do you want me to pick up your stick?" and starts picking it up for me. And I'm there like, "No, I can pick it up. It's fine." And she just assumed she was being helpful. But I don't want you to touch my walking stick. You know, if someone else...
I want your help, I'll ask for it.
Yeah, and it's the fact that she asked whilst doing it. I'm like, I don't know if that's just excessively British or if that's, but yeah, it's the problem of people going, "Oh, I'll help you with that," and doing it. And even when they do announce that they're helping you, it's still wrong. But like the founder of the sort of hashtag, Amy, her experiences, people will just grab her, see a blind woman, and just drag her along the road, which will completely throw her off balance. It will cause problems. They'll take her the wrong way. And, some random person comes up and grabs you and you can't see them. That's awful. Like, you don't know who they are. And
I guess it's come out of a place where she's chosen to enable herself by using a cane, and by using that cane, she's inherently made herself more visible, or she's shared her challenges with more people by using that cane, and it's as a result of that she's experienced more challenges. And I think that's so true for so many people, because as soon as you start using something that identifies you as being a disabled person or being a person who needs to use a mobility aid, then you inherently open yourself up to this whole new problem that actually is somewhat less enabling.
I find it quite odd using mine, because I use my walking stick. I've used it for about 6 months now. I use it for fatigue and dizziness more than anything else, just to give a clue into my experiences of it. So I am able to put it down. I'm able to walk without it. I'm completely fine. It will just make me tired, and there's a risk I'll walk into a wall. But I say that so casually. That's a normal thing, right? But when I've gone out with my walking stick, people will step out of the way for me. I'll walk into a shop or I'll get into a queue and they'll go, "Oh, you can go first." But it's the dichotomy of suddenly everyone knows you're disabled. Yes, I can go into shops without people, moaning at me, but also people are now staring at me. Fairly late at night, I was going to a friend's house for his birthday about a year ago, and we've got a railway bridge outside my house, which is a big bridge with very high walls, so you walk through it and no one can see into it, sort of thing. And I'm sort of walking as quick as I can, but using my stick to sort of like propel myself up the stairs. And this old man comes the other way, and my stick is right-handed. And I'm walking on the left and holding on. He goes, "Oh, do you want to walk on the right? It's easier to hold the bar." And I was like, "Oh, no, thank you. My stick is right-handed." And he's like, "Oh, okay." And as we're crossing each other on the stairs, he stopped right next to me, very close to me. He goes, "What happened?" And I'm so thankful for my past self, because I just stood there and went, "I'm going for a walk." Which, but he's there like, "What happened?" And he got so close to me and up in my face, and it's just not okay. And I don't know if anyone else would have done that. If, a younger man would have thought, "Oh, I don't want to intimidate her," or if, a woman wouldn't want to intimidate me. But an older man stopping right next to me in my face and asking me invasive questions was so intimidating.
It's kind of why it's really important to use the social model. Just the idea that it's not just physical barriers that are blocking our ability to live full, independent, autonomous lives. It's kind of both an individual on a kind of social interaction level and an institutional thing, because I've experienced it in definitely both settings, a kind of benevolent, paternalist, but that attitude of, we are to be cared for and our decisions are to be made on our behalf for our benefit, rather than our choices about our own lives. That's kind of only become more apparent, certainly, since I've left higher education, but I was certainly kind of most oppressed by it within higher education, because within the confines of that system, there was no way to navigate out of it.
I guess maybe let's have one final point to close off on, a really simple kind of an actionable point. So do you think that there is something specifically that universities or HAIs could be doing better to support their students to identify as disabled women?
Listen to us. I bring so many things forward. I say a lot. I honestly, in the least sort of full of myself way, they're so lucky to have me standing there and pointing out what's wrong. Like, you don't always get people like me who are A, knowledgeable, and B, willing to speak up. And with that resource that they've got of me yelling at them, they throw it in the bin. And if they sat down and they heard me say, I'm having problems with this, you could do this, here is what's wrong. If they use that resource, they'd be doing so much better. And it's such a shame that it's down to me, a student, who I don't have any formal training on disability. I don't know who does, to be honest, but in the student movement, I've gone from the ground up, and everything I know is my own.
We all do.
And
grassroots.
And yeah, I have no formal training on it. I just know what the visibility strips are on the poles. I know what tactile paving is. I know that. And it's such a shame that it falls on my shoulders as the knowledgeable disabled person who's willing to speak up, the intersection of those three things. And then I get ignored. And I feel like partially that is because I am a woman and I'm seen as hysterical. And I'm not listened to. I'm seen as, we need to solve this problem of why Victoria's upset. We don't look at it as, we need to fix the system for disabled students. And that's the problem.
Thank you, Victoria. I think for me, while I remember it very quickly, the thing that would have made a massive difference to me is not being identified by my specific label or diagnosis or disability. And because my experience was very much, this is your diagnosis, here's the support that we give to people with that diagnosis, I didn't necessarily access really specific individualized things until I found DNA and realized that there was this whole social model and this was how we could actually be properly supported. So my big key takeaway, I think, is not to think of somebody by their diagnosis, but as a person and the barriers that they actually experience.
I would echo Victoria's, I think, listen and believe people, women. I mean, that applies in so many contexts. If you think about especially how universities deal with sexual violence, which does so frequently happen to disabled women, even though we can be ignored in those conversations. The way universities are institutionally set up to handle that is to sweep them under the rug, but also it's the assumption that what we have to say should be discounted or is not of importance. And I'm not sure if that's always, a result in active or a result of active misogyny, but it is that passive kind of passive paternalism, sexism. It is frequent and often. All of the institutional problems of society are prominent in higher education, and it's foolish to think that it's foolish to think that even if you personally, as a operative within higher education, mean well, that you are, outside of the institutional issues that are prevalent in the entire society. We all need to be working on it, kind of thing.
I think that is a brilliant point to end today's podcast on. I think that's about all we have time for. Thank you so very much, Victoria and Alice, for joining us on this podcast today and for sharing your own lived experience. I've had a great time.